sing There Is No Limitations in the Spirit. No limitations in the Spirit, and no limitations in the glory. No limitations in the Spirit, and no limitations in the glory. There are no limitations in the Spirit, and no limitations in the glory. No limitations in the Spirit, and no limitations in the glory. Oh, there's no limitations in the Spirit, and no limitations in the glory. No limitations in the Spirit, and no limitations in the glory. There are no limitations in His glory. Hallelujah. Let's sing one more before we're seated. Let's sing I Can Feel the Flutter, Flutter, Flutter. I can feel the flutter, flutter, flutter of their wings. It's the living creatures in the wind and they sing. Holy, holy, holy to the one who was and is to come. I can feel the flutter, flutter, flutter of their wings. Yes, I can feel the flutter, flutter, flutter of their wings. Yes, the living creatures in the wind as they sing. Holy, holy, holy to the one who was and is to come. I can feel the flutter, flutter, flutter of their wings. Yes, I can feel the flutter, flutter, flutter of their wings. They're crying, holy, holy, holy to the King. So I fell down on my face. Oh, the glory in this place makes me feel the flutter, flutter, flutter of their wings. Oh, yes, I can feel the flutter, flutter, flutter of their wings. They're crying, holy, holy, holy Ezekiel felt that flutter the first time. Excuse me, singing high here. He wasn't in a good place. He wasn't in a place that looked pretty. He was in captivity with all the rest of everybody else. So my point in telling you that is, you don't have to feel good to feel a flutter. And your circumstances don't have to look good to feel a flutter. And you don't have to get down and depressed by how things look, because the glory of the Lord shows up in any and every situation. And so on your good days, it's glory. But on the days when you wake up and it just feels in the natural like everything's going wrong, it's still glory. And there's still fluttering all around you. It's just a matter of who's going to look to see it. And who's going to stop to listen and hear it. And who's going to feel it. And that line says, who was and is to come. No matter what's going on and how long you feel, he's still going to come again and again and again and again. And he keeps on coming. And his mercies are new every single morning. So you don't have to worry about, sometimes we get in this, I can't feel it. And that concerns us because we can't feel it. But the truth is, whether you feel it or not, this room is very crowded. Last week on Wednesday night, actually, I just about got so messed up here. I was trying to hold it in because it's Wednesday, not just fall over. But the reason I got so messed up is because, and I don't remember what song we were singing, but Matt was singing, and all of a sudden, the Spirit just spoke that to me and said, this room is very crowded right now. And I knew that there were the spirits of just men, that there were angels filling this room, and that it didn't matter if there was 10 of us or 15 of us, because the room was very crowded. And so whatever situation you're in, you're never alone. Don't listen to this, we're in this alone together, or whatever the saying is, because you're not alone. I don't care if you're sitting in a room all by yourself, you're not alone. You are surrounded by a great cloud of witness, and they're cheering you on. And saying that if we made it, you can make it. And telling you to push on and take another step. And that's all it takes is you hear that flutter. And if you haven't had the privilege of hearing Brother Matt preach on that, he preaches it from a whole nother angle, that not only did Ezekiel see the cherubim, but we are the cherubim. And you can get up and flutter right along with them and welcome in the presence of the Lord. Well, thank you so much for being here tonight. I know we're running on skeleton crew. And I know it's always different. It's not that it's bad. But when you got one person singing and just the organ and the drums going and the piano going and 3 or 4 people singing, I know it's always different. And every time you do different, you got to get into that groove and dig in and get past the different, because your mind, the mind don't like different. Mine would have everything just be the same. You think it wouldn't, but the reality is, if you go and look through your life, how many times you just repeat the same old thing? Your mind will just want to repeat the same old thing, and you got to get out of that. We sing a song, I'm being lifted out of myself and into the glory. And there's a line in there that says, I'm being lifted out of my mind and into the glory, because sometimes you just got to get out of your old rut and what you're used to and move on to something new. But we're so grateful that you came tonight. You may be seated. Thank you for especially coming in all of this crazy weather. I know that it's not always easy for people that have to drive a long ways to get out in that kind of weather and drive. So we do thank you for being here. And we're going to go ahead and take up the offering. And we just thank you. Brother Matt's already told you this, but we have not missed a beat. Through everything with the world claiming a lot of calamity, this church has not missed a beat. We've had every need supplied, and we haven't had to, beg and whine and do any of that stuff. The people have been so faithful. They've been faithful in the church. They've been faithful online. They've been faithful sending checks in the mail. They've just been faithful, and we are so grateful for your faithfulness. It's that faithfulness that keeps us open so that you can come in and be blessed when you need to be blessed. And we're grateful for that, and it just makes our lives so much easier. I know the Lord can supply, and He will supply in all times, but when you don't have to think about it and it's right there, then that's one less thing you got to think about, and you can just move on with supplying the needs of the people, and we are so grateful for you. So if you get your offering ready, we'll say our word over it, our proclamation over it. That proclamation is just to remind us why we give. And to remind us not to just throw it down in a plate and not think about it again, but to know that it's going for the kingdom and that anything and everything you ever gave, Jesus said, you will get it 100-fold back in this life. Not in some other life, not off in glory, but in this life, you shall receive 100-fold. Anything that you give to Him comes back to you. So let's say, this is my seed.
My seed.
God gave it to me.
God gave it to me.
I now reinvest it.
I now reinvest
into
it
His great kingdom.
into His great kingdom.
For the working of the ministry.
For the working of the ministry.
And I expectantly await.
And I expectantly await.
A return harvest.
A return harvest.
In every area.
In every area.
Of my life. God bless you. I am coming down. I like down here better. Personal preference. Everybody has their own. I like down here better. And I feel like I get a treat because I feel like some of y'all I've never gotten to preach to before. It's been a while since I got to speak, and so some of y'all are newbies to me. So you'll have to give me the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, not Dwayne. Dwayne has been. He has heard me. Yes, and he is my most misbehaved of the congregation. I'm up here. I guess that is husband right. I need to get him up there. That would be the good payback. I need to find where I wrote my notes down. Otherwise, we are really going to be flying by the seat of our pants, which is okay, because the Holy Ghost speaks either way. Okay, here we go. I was just in the wrong section. And all of you were here on Sunday, and I think everybody, just about everybody that was here tonight was. We had awesome services on Sunday. I had to miss out on one because I was taking care of the youngins. But that helps the grown-ups to be able to enter in and not do multitasking. Right. But I was here for the night service. We had a wonderful service. The Lord moved, and the Lord blessed. And then Janet did get to speak just a little because the Holy Ghost took over, but she got to speak just a tiny bit. And she was talking about new things and entering into the new, and that really opened up and leads into what I'm going to be talking about tonight. It was a good lead into it because not too long ago, a few weeks back, I was listening to someone preach, and they made this statement. They didn't have all the answers to it yet, and weren't claiming they did, but they just made this statement, and it rang with me because if you've been a church, what they call you grew up in church, a church kid that grew up in it, or you have been in it for a very long time now, even if you didn't grow up there. What this person said was basically, she said, my whole life, I've heard it's a new day, or a new day's coming. And I'm, at that time now, she's up older, and she said, I just want to know, Lord, when is the new day going to get here? Because everybody keeps saying, she said, my daddy preached it was coming, and I get up and I say it's coming, and I'm wondering, when is this new day going to get here? And I thought, that is very true, We've all been there. I've heard new days since I was a child, And one thing that she kind of referenced to, and then really in my prayer, the Lord just answered me, is that The reason that everybody preaches new day is because it is a new day to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So you may think, well, he said that 40 years ago there was going to be a new day. And ain't nothing changed for me. Well, you just haven't stepped into it yet. But what was a new day to me 10 years ago is not the same new day to me today. Because I've learned more, I've grown more, I know more. I can tell you certainly 20 years ago, my new day was totally different from what would be a new day to me today. Because the more you know, the more you grow. And if you won't step over into the new, Mom and I kind of talked about this a little bit. If you refuse to step into the new when it's presented to you, now you can't step into it before the Lord brings it to you, before the Spirit brings it to you. But if you won't step in, what happens is it's not even so much that you get stuck at the old. You actually start going back. And you go backwards. And that's why you see people that you thought would never fall or would never do this. Or how could they ever get in a state of being cold? Because, 10 years ago, they were shouting all over running around the church. And you never would have thought that they would turn cold on God. Well, how did that happen? Because they wouldn't step into the new. The new day came, and they didn't get in on it. And what happens is you just kind of get cold. And eventually you just turn back to the flesh. Because the old won't work. And so you just get tired. Because what happens is when the old don't work no more and you keep trying to work it and you keep trying to work it and you keep trying to pray your same old prayer and it hadn't worked, you get mad with God. Because he didn't answer that prayer, that same old, same old. And the truth is he did. He showed you that new day, that new way, but you didn't want that way. Sometimes we're like Burger King, we want it our way, not God's way. And then the next thing I started asking the Lord, then we went on vacation, and the year previous to that we went on vacation, and I read George Warnock's The Feast of Tabernacles for the first time, and I wanted to read it again because there's a lot in it. It's a long book, a lot of information in it, but it's really good, and I just wanted to remind myself of that. And what it's about is basically all the feasts were in Leviticus. It said 3 times you're up here before me. Okay, and he told Moses, he said, you're supposed to come in Passover, in Pentecost, and in Tabernacles. And we know that in the New Testament, that started being fulfilled not just in an Old Testament way of them showing up as a congregation, but Jesus became the Passover lamb. And then on the day of Pentecost, they all got filled with the Holy Ghost while they were praying. So all these things start fulfilling these feasts in our own lives. And so I just asked the Lord, I said, well, where are we in all this? I mean, I know I've been hearing tabernacles for a while now, but that we're supposed to move into tabernacles. And if you want to know more about tabernacles, it's basically what we call the Feast of Sonship. Because you kind of move out of, first of all, tabernacle is a movable structure. And that's what they literally were supposed to do. They were supposed to get out of their houses that they had built in their land and make these little booths, these like tent-like structures, and live in them for a week. Sounds fun, right? But it represented something because in the Old Testament, living in a tent, living in a tabernacle meant anywhere God sent you, you were willing to go. It meant that you weren't so settled in what you had going on that you couldn't listen to the Lord. Because Abraham had lived in a tent, even though he was the richest man on earth. He lived in a tent and went wherever the Lord told him to go. And that's what it represented, was that you aren't stuck in your old ways. But anything that God says at any moment, you're ready to do. And so you never put your tent stakes down too far. Because you know when the word of the Lord moves to go and move ahead, whether it be natural, spiritual, emotional, sometimes you got to leave some emotional junk behind. And your body doesn't go anywhere, but you got to let that go. And you got to move on. And, and so whenever he says, now is the time to move on, you're ready. And that is what being a son is. Those that are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. Sons of God are willing to do whatever he says at a moment's notice. Sons of God are the ones that can hear in the still small voice. It don't have to be shouted, over an amplifier by 15 prophets before you finally decide maybe you'll, put your toe a little bit into the water. That's not sonship. Sonship is whatever you say, whenever you say, I'm going to do it. And we're all growing up into it. Nobody's saying I'm there yet. But we have to, that's the goal, because Paul said you don't get to stop. You press towards the high calling in Christ Jesus. So the goal of sonship is literally, you want to know what it is? Go read the Gospels. It's Jesus' life. It's the kind of life that he lived. Because in his life, he said, I don't say anything if I don't hear my Father say it. And I don't do anything if my Father doesn't tell me to do it. And I'm willing because and he got so, and we know he was 100% God and he was 100% man. The problem is we don't know we're 100% God and we're 100% man. He's taken up his abode, his tabernacle inside of us. And that makes us 100% God and 100% man. And so a lot of times we look back and we go, well, of course Jesus did that. I mean, he was Jesus. Of course Jesus did it. We would all expect Jesus to do it. He's Jesus. He's the Son of God. And yet it tells us that we are his brethren, that we are sons. So anything and everything that he was willing to do, he had the power to do. So do we. But that requires being a good listener and listening to what the Father says and then doing it. And that's what Tabernacles is. But when I asked the Lord, I said, well, where are we in all this? He said, we're at the Trumpets. Because the very first part of Tabernacles was called a Feast of Trumpets. And I want you to turn with me to Leviticus 23, because that's where the Feast of Trumpets is explained to us and what it all meant. And so, right now, that is the time that we're in. We're blowing trumpets. And it doesn't matter if you're a minister up here or if it's in your own life, you are blowing a trumpet. Now, what kind of sound you're giving out? That's another story. There's a lot of it. Just, don't think just because it's labeled Christian that it's Christ. Because just because something's labeled Christian doesn't make it Christ. That's where you have to have a discerning of spirits, not to find every evil thing and every wrong, but to know, is that Christ sounding that out, or is that just the flesh? Because some things, and a lot of things right now in this time, are just flesh sounding out. And they're giving forth an uncertain sound. How do you know it's uncertain? Because everybody's in chaos and fear. And everybody's in confusion. And when you talk to people, they don't know what to do. And they're not sure what's right. And they don't know who's telling the truth. Well, who's telling the truth? God. He's the only one you can trust right now. He's the only one you can run to right now. He really was always the only one. But sometimes there comes a point in time in our lives, and at this time we see in the whole world, where there's a very clear dividing line between this is chaos and this is peace. And you have to decide which side you want to live on. And if you'll go ahead and listen now, it's a lot easier to decide. If you've been here long enough, you've heard the stories of Michelle O'Donnell's story of the monkey and the dragons. And she had a dream in which she was walking down this path, and she knew it was the path of life. It was her life, what she was supposed to be doing, what God had called her for. And it was beautiful. But as she kept walking down it, these monkeys kept attacking her around her legs. And she said the more she tried to fight them, the worse it got. But if she would stop looking at them and just look at the path, the monkeys would freeze even in midair as they tried to attack her. And she said as hard as it was, she just kept walking and ignoring all the chattering and everything going on beside her, because if she just ignored it, they couldn't get to it. And then she finally got to where she was getting close to the end of it, and here came these two huge dragons. And she said everything in her was so terrified, but she knew she had to treat it like the monkey. She could not give them attention. And she had to keep on walking. And immediately the dragons had to get out of her way, and she kept on down the path. And then she woke up. And she later on tells the story of her sister who got very sick, and how her sister just couldn't get over it. No matter what words she said to her, no matter what she said to her. And she said that the reality was, because she had never dealt with the monkeys in her life, she couldn't face the dragons. The Bible puts it this way: if you've run with the footmen and they weary you, if you can't deal with the little things, if you don't ever take care of those little things in your life, then you will not be able to run with the horses. So that when big things happen, you won't be able to deal with it. You won't know what to do, all because you didn't have the little things in place beforehand. And so in Leviticus chapter 23, and we're going to start with verse 24, it says, "Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, in the 1st day of the month." Now I want you to hear that, because 7 means rest. 7 means whole. 7 means complete. Stop waiting to feel complete. You're complete right now. Don't wait another day to feel it. Start declaring it. Sometimes you got to be the trumpet of your own life. Janet talked about this on Sunday. Sometimes you got to call an end to something. And you got to blow that trumpet and say, no more. I'm complete. It doesn't matter what it looks like, what it feels like. If the Lord calls me complete, I'm complete. Because you see, the deal is with rest that Jesus came and everybody celebrated the rest on the Sabbath, right? But Jesus comes and he's healing people on the Sabbath. And the Pharisees didn't like that. And he comes, and when his disciples get hungry, they broke corn off on the Sabbath. And the Pharisees didn't like that. And they said, well, how can you work on the Sabbath? And Jesus turned around and told them, more or less paraphrasing, you don't get what the Sabbath is all about. You think that you were made to serve the Sabbath. And I'm telling you, God created rest for you. And so many times we think we are here to serve something or to work our way into rest. And we were not made to work into rest. Rest was created for us. So you don't have to wait or work your way into this. You can start living in it even right now. Oh, I know that the world says, it's in chaos, and it says you can't, and it says all those things. But it doesn't matter what it says. The reality is you have every right to this day enter into the rest. Not another day. Too many of us put that off to one day, someday. We'll get it all together, and all the pieces will fall in place, and we'll be at rest. But I'm here to tell you, if rest ain't on the inside, it won't be on the outside. What is in you is what you will create and manifest around you. And so if you don't get it in here first and start blowing that trumpet inside of you and saying, I live in the rest. And the other thing that when I was reading that not too long ago about Jesus and the Sabbath, another thing that jumped out to me is, time. We think, and we serve time like it's our slave master. And the truth is, time was created just for us. It was created to be a tool, to be useful. But one day the Egyptians were in bondage, and God showed up, and through Moses he said, look, I'm saying it's a brand new year. Now, it was not a brand new year. It wasn't New Year's Eve time. But he said, I'm declaring that this is the start of a brand new year. So what does that mean? That means today is your 7th month. Tomorrow is your 7th month. December, when the calendar says 12, it's still the 7th month for you. You are still in your rest because you're not affected by the times and the seasons. They're there for your use. They're there for when you need them, but you're not a slave to them. And you get to declare when you want to have rest in your life, not somebody else, certainly not the world, not your circumstances, not your body, not any of those things. They don't get to declare that for you. You get your rest when you want it. The truth is, when we really want something, we usually get it. And when we want bad enough to just stop all the chaos and enter into the rest, we'll start to get there. Now, you may have to tell your mind to shut up. We all do. Because the soul is still learning. It's still being saved. Your spirit is saved. It knows it. That's why when you pray in the spirit, you don't feel distressed. That's why when, you come in here, and I don't care how much hell has gone on out there, you get in here and you get to shouting and you get to crying and you get to praying, and it just feels like everything's going to be okay, even though you haven't physically seen a manifestation of everything being okay. But in that moment, because you're in the Spirit and He's in control, you know everything's going to be okay. You just know it on the inside of you. You know that you know that you know. You don't have to have somebody come to tell you. You know it in that moment. And that's because the spirit man's in total control right now. And so your soul is still being saved. So sometimes you have to say, no, shut up. That's right. We're not going to think those thoughts. We're not going to allow that to dwell here. I'm not going to let you. The truth is, the thing that steals our peace and our joy the most is usually our own stinking thinking and what we let go on. And if you're having trouble, I always say this, I've said it many times, if you're having trouble doing it on your own, then we have this wonderful tool now called the internet. And it's wonderful in this regard. Now, you can use it for evil or for good. It's like anything else in the world. You use it how you wish to use it. But we have this wonderful thing now where you can turn on the Word. You can turn on even your favorite preacher. You don't even have to wait for your favorite preacher to get up. You can just look them up on there. You can turn on praise and worship. You can turn on any style of praise and worship you want. If you like gospel, turn on gospel. If you like country, turn on country. You know, if you like just Bethel or whoever you like, whatever blesses you, that is your opportunity to do what's going to help you in that moment to get you out of yourself and to get it over into something else. And if you really just can't for whatever reason, I know there's times that we are at work or we're in a situation where we can't turn that on. Start praying on the Spirit on the inside. Spirit man's still there. Everything's still going on. How long do I do it? As long as you need it. There's been days that it was almost all day, if that's what it took, because whatever was going on was trying to fight against my mind, and I had to do it all day long. And that's okay. Do it as long as you got to do it. And well, what if I look a little weird? You'll look a little weird. What if I answer somebody in tongues? Because that can happen. You answer in tongues. This is kind of how I feel about it now. You know, I was washing my car not too long ago outside. And, you know, throughout our neighborhood, we have teenagers, we have kids. And they blast whatever they feel like blasting. And I tell you, it ain't always godly and pretty and holy. Okay? And so I got out there and I said, you know what? I'm going to blast whatever I feel like blasting. And I just got out there and blasted my praise and worship and speaking in tongues. Everything speaking in tongues on there as I washed my car, because I just decided if you can blast yours, I can blast mine. I'm in my driveway. I can do what I need to do. Okay. So get into that seventh day mindset, that seventh month, that this is a time of rest for me. It is not a time of warfare. Your warfare is accomplished. It's all done. The Word says it is. Well, I don't feel like it is. It doesn't matter. Feelings come and go. They really do. They come and go. You probably felt one way when you were 18 and another way when you were 38. I mean, you know, feelings come and go. It's just one of those things. They can change. If you don't believe it, you know, look at all the divorce rates around everywhere. Feelings change. So you don't want to get caught up in your feelings. You want to live according to the Word. And it said, in the first day of the month shall you have a Sabbath. So there we go back to that rest. A memorial, a blowing of the trumpets. They were remembering something. What were they remembering? Well, I believe they were partially remembering back to Mount Sinai. The first place that God showed up to really talk to all of them. Not just Moses, but to speak to all of them. And the Bible says that on that mountain they heard thunders, they saw lightning, and they heard trumpets blowing, announcing the presence of the Lord. And Moses goes up to talk with God, and God says, go get the people. And so they went down. But the Word says that they heard the trumpet and saw the lightning, and they got scared. And they wouldn't go up. And they said, no, Moses, you go up, and you talk to him. And, you know, we think that we want trumpets and lightning, we want all those things, but they got it and they got scared. Why did they get scared? No relationship. To the flip side of that, not long after that, because Moses tells them, he said, don't be afraid. God is here to prove you if you're going to reverence him or not. The King James says fear, but if you look up that word, it's related to reverence him, worship him. He's just here to find out if you're going to come worship him, be his people. He's ready to be your God. He wants to know if you want to be his people, but they were too afraid. And they sent Moses back, and the Bible says that Moses walked into what to them looked like a darkness to meet with God, and he had no fear in going to do it. Why? Because Moses had a relationship with God. For people who don't have a relationship with the Lord, when we start blowing this trumpet and saying, you can be like Christ, that scares them. They think that we are somehow stealing glory from the Lord. That we're somehow, really just being blasphemous to say that we can walk like Jesus did in the earth, even though the Bible says it. He said, Jesus said, the works that I do, these shall you do also, and even greater works than these. And, and he talked about, me and my Father, we're going to take up our abode in you. And, he said, I'm going to make my tabernacle among men. And he said that, Paul said that we're heirs and we're joint heirs with Jesus Christ. We're joining in with everything that he did. And John talks, it was either John or Peter talks about how as in this world, as he is, so are we. So it's not that there's any lack of word on it. But if you have a lack of relationship, then you hear that trumpet and you think, oh, I can't go up there. Yeah. That God, he's too holy. He's too wonderful. I can't be like that. I can't ever be like that. Well, in your own natural self, you probably can't. But the trumpet isn't blowing to try to get you to be anything. The trumpet blows to call the assembly together. Now, what you will be is exactly what God speaks over you. The truth is, none of us can make ourselves holy enough to ever be like God, quote unquote. And for years, people have tried to do it. Through their dress, through what they did and they didn't do, through all their do's and don'ts. And it changed constantly. And then it became your works. We kind of at least got a little bit out of our dress, but then it was still our works. You couldn't get up here and preach unless you fasted 40 days because you might miss it. And people didn't give because they loved the Lord. They gave because they were scared of what God might do to them if they didn't give. And you didn't pray just because you loved Jesus. You prayed because God might knock you over the head with a hammer if you didn't pray. Or you might get in a car accident as soon as you stepped out that door if you didn't pray. And you better get saved because you might get hit by a semi on your way home. And if you don't, you're going to hell. So y'all better get saved right now. I'll tell you, Matt's got his funny stories. We went on a trip to Oklahoma when I was about 14. And let me just tell you, I was anything but saved. But we flew out there. It was our first trip on an airplane. And boy, I'd never been on an airplane before. When that airplane got ready to take off, I said my prayers real fast. Lord, forgive me for everything. Just everything. Just everything. I just want to go to heaven if we crash. Didn't mean, did you mean it? No, I didn't mean it. I bet I didn't want to go to hell. I wanted to go to heaven. But did I mean I serve you with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, with all my strength? No. We landed that plane. I was the same old I was before. Now, thank God, 2 years later, the Lord did get a hold of me. And he sovereignly came in and put his spirit so hard on me that I just thought I wasn't going to be able to breathe if I didn't give my life to him. And he took care of the whole situation. But you're doing it because you're scared to death. Another time, like Matt said, we all grew up, heaven's gates, hell's flames. And then they all showed us this thing. What was that movie? I don't know what that movie was, but it was scary. Everybody went on the rapture.
Oh, Left Behind.
Thief in the Night or something like that.
Yeah, that's all.
And Left Behind's the newer version. I was little then, so it had to be Thief in the Night. And boy, one day, somehow, just like Matt, I came out, and for some reason, Mom and Dad were totally gone, and so was Matt. And so y'all all have to know. Some of y'all did know Pastor Edwards, who was our grandfather. So I called down there because I thought my thought process was, if Pawpaw's still here, I'm okay. Didn't really need anything, just needed to know that I was okay. So I called down. Pawpaw answered. okay, we're all okay. And I don't know what excuse I made for calling, but, I just needed to know that I was okay. Well, when the trumpet blows, all that goes out the window. Either you're here to serve him with all your heart, or you're not. And so that trumpet gets to blow, and that was a memorial of the day he came. And he told them, what did he want from them? Did he want something? He actually, if you read the whole thing, in the beginning, he didn't even want offerings and sacrifices. And later on, in the Psalms, he's going to say, offerings and sacrifices thou wouldest not. Okay? He didn't really want all those lambs and all those things. He wanted a people. And that's what he told Moses. He said, go get those people to come talk with me. Because I want to be their God. I want to be I want them to be my people. I want to make them a kingdom of priests. Priests that can go out and get the rest of creation. Priests that can go out and you're not becoming Christ-like just so you can walk around and say, I'm Christ-like. That is not the purpose of it. It's not even to get your needs met. It'll work for that. And thank God it'll work for that. It's not even to get your body healed. It'll work for that, and thank God it will. It's not even just to get your family saved, that us four and no more mentality. Because I know a lot of people that would send the rest of the world to hell, but their kids that run around like crazy are apparently all going to heaven with them because you can't say nothing about them. But the rest of the world is going down. And because why? Because they have that mentality of it's just about us. They're not priests. They haven't become priests unto God. The whole point of becoming Christ-like is so that then you can save the rest of creation and bring them in. Because that's what the Word says. It says that nations are going to look on Zion. They're going to look on Zion and see we got something they need. Why? Because their idols are going to fall, have to fall. The kingdom of this world cannot stand because they're built on man's ways. And man's ways, the flesh profiteth nothing. I don't care how big they can build the tower, it will fall. And no matter how big we keep building it, history shows us it falls. It falls again and again. No matter how big your empire, if it's built on man's principles and man's ways and not on God, the only one that's going to stand in the end is Zion. Because it's the only one built on truth. It's the only one that's going to usher in the king. But the Word says when Babylon sees that religious system sees it, when all their props have fallen out, but Zion still stands. When Egypt sees it, when the world sees it, when all their props have fallen out from underneath them, but somehow Zion is still standing. It says even when Moab and Edom and all of those people, when they see it, Moab was the place where you go when you don't want to change. Well, all of a sudden those people that don't want to change, when all their props fall out from underneath them, but they see Zion still standing, they're going to come. And they're going to want to be taught about the Lord. But we won't have anything to teach them if we haven't entered on into this feast. If we haven't learned to walk in it, you can only take someone as far as you can go. And as far as you know. So if you haven't learned to walk in it yet, then you won't be able to teach them. So we're blowing this trumpet, and it says then it's a holy convocation. That's, King James. Holy just means set apart to the Lord. So holy is not how you dress, not how long your hair is or how short it is, not your skirt or your pants, not makeup, no makeup, jewelry, no jewelry. Do what you want to do on that. That's neither here nor there. Dress has changed. This planet has been around for a long time with a lot of people on it. That changes and fluctuates. Okay? That's a changeable thing. That's a natural thing. Holy just means set apart to the Lord. And when you set yourself apart to the Lord, you don't have to worry about how you dress, because if you put on something and it hurts your heart, you'll know it. If you watch something and it hurts your heart, you'll know it. Because you've already said, Lord, I'm set apart to you. And sometimes we see other people and they're not as holy, quote unquote, as us. And we want to condemn them for that. But the Lord has to work that out in them, not us. So, and sometimes it's just ignorance. Sometimes they haven't read that part of the Bible yet. Give them a minute. They just got into it. Just got into this thing. And don't expect them to come in here looking holy off the streets. It's not how it works. They come in, however they look, whatever state they're in. Your job, if you remember in the book of Zechariah, he sees this vision of Joshua, and Joshua is supposed to be dressed in white linen. He's supposed to look great, but he doesn't. He's dressed in filthy rags. And what has to happen? It wasn't that Joshua got his own self all straightened up. No, the Lord had to come in and give him a new garment and take away those rags. And then he put a mitre on his head. That's just like a crown on his head. And what did it say? It said, holiness unto the Lord. The Lord is the one that crowns us with holiness. It's not us that has to make it happen. He crowns us. And if he calls you holy, here's what happens. When he calls you holy, even when you want to run, you try to run and nothing fits right. And nothing sounds right. And you just stand out. And you try to forget, but you can't forget. When I told you about some of my wilder days, and we went to this party one time, and they were all, well, about half of them claimed they were, into magic and Satan worship and all this stuff. Just craziness. And I wasn't into all that. I just happened to be there. And they had for some reason there was a Bible there, probably not for any good reason. But no, none of them wanted to touch it. And I just reached over there and grabbed it and thought it was funny. And they said something about putting a curse. And I said, you can put a curse, but it won't affect me. And back then, my papa's a preacher. He'll just spray it off. Why? Because once the Lord says holiness over you, you just can't buy into it no matter how much you want to act like you buy into it. Peter, he tried to cuss and he couldn't cuss right.
Yeah.
They said, no, you've been with him. You're a Nazarene. You're one of those Nazarenes. We can hear it in your voice. You've been there. You're one of those followers of Jesus. And that's just how it is. You try to fit in, but you don't fit in no more. Once he declares holiness over you, even when you would do wrong, and even if you do wrong, immediately your heart knows. And immediately you want to ask for forgiveness. Why? And even if you do it 10 times, you still keep asking for forgiveness. Why? Because he's declared your holiness. And once he does it, there's no going back on it. You can't go back on the word of God. And he won't go back on his word. Once he's spoken over you, we've said this around here one time because I heard, I believe it was Juanita Bynum say it, that, if you're a preacher and you're called to be a preacher and you go and get drunk, you're just a drunk preacher. But it didn't change your calling. Nothing has changed. And if you're a born-again believer and you try to go back to the world, you're just a born-again believer out in the world. But it hasn't changed. Your calling's still the same. And you get back over into it. When I gave my life back to the Lord, I had gotten filled with the Holy Ghost when I was 8 years old out at an Oral Roberts camp meeting, because I wouldn't do it here. I was way too shy to do it in front of everybody here. But out there, I didn't know nobody. Nobody was with me in that class. And they offered it to me. And so I went up there, spoke in tongues, but probably never spoken again. Up until about 15, getting born again. And then came down here, and they were having a prayer meeting or a prayer line of some sort. And everybody, of course, here is speaking in tongues, because even before it was kingdom, it was Pentecostal. So
yeah.
Everybody around here has always spoken tongues and danced and shouted. And I just thought, I wonder if it'll still work. And tried, just opened my mouth to speak, and out it came. And it never stopped. Why? Because it didn't go nowhere. I could try to suppress it all I want, but the Spirit was still in me. It hadn't gone nowhere. So once you're holy, once he calls it holy, it's holy. And a congregation is just a big word for a meeting. It's a fancy word. Don't get caught up in that. It just means you get together and you all get together. That's convocation. And then it says that, let me see where I am. In verse 25, you shall do no servile work therein. And that's a big thing that the Lord spoke to me when I was studying this, because we have walked around. When you look up the word servile work, it does mean just work, but if you look up the root to it and you go back to the root, it goes back to that word tilling, where it said that when Adam came out of the garden, he had to now till the land if he wanted any food. Whereas before, he ate freely whenever he wanted to, because the Lord had provided everything. Now he had to work for it. And if he didn't work, he didn't eat. And because the land was cursed, even as he worked for it, you had these thorns, these weeds, these thistles. We all know how it goes. If you're a gardener, you plant something, and you turn up that soil and plant it, and it looks so beautiful. And in a couple of days, weeds start to grow around it, and you got to go get them out. Why? Because they were always there. But once you started watering and tilling the soil and doing those things, they started coming up. And that's the way that toiling or tilling works. If you're going to do it on your own, by your own works, I don't care how good your works might look, there are always going to be weeds and thorns and more stuff for you to do. If you're a gardener, you never get to walk away from that garden and say, I'm going to leave you for a couple months and I'll be back in a little bit. Because when you do, you got a mess to deal with when you come back. It won't look all pretty when you get back there. You're constantly going to have to work it. But he said in the Feast of Trumpets, I don't want you doing no work anymore. I don't want you being a slave to anything. That servile work there is talking about bondage, slavery, being a slave to something. And that doesn't mean just go quit your job without asking the Lord what to do. It does, however, mean that that job better not be your taskmaster. Meaning that you wouldn't leave it if the Lord asked. Meaning that you give it 150%, but you come in here drag, and you don't got nothing left. And other things, look, the word says, many lords have you had over you. It can be many things. It doesn't just have to be one thing. It doesn't just have to be, a work you do with your hands. Sometimes we're a slave to fear. You know that people that live in lack are actually a slave to money and they don't even know it? They don't know they're a slave to money. They feel like they don't even got no money, so how could they possibly be a slave to it? Because they're spending their whole life, most of the time, either wishing they had it, and that's all they sit around and think about, and how much they don't have. Trying to get it. Mm-hmm. I don't know which one's worse, but I know it's hard. When you work hard and hard and hard and hard and hard, then you come home and you ain't got nothing to show for it because it all went to somebody else. Mm-hmm. That's slavery.
Yeah. Yep, it is.
Or when you work hard and you know you worked hard all week and you still can't pay that bill. Mm-hmm. It's a slavery to something.
Yeah.
When you have to sit there and worry about, is there going to be a roof over my head? Or am I going? That's all slavery. Well, how do you get out from underneath it? Yes, the blessing of the Lord. Yes, of course. But you realize that that's more of a mindset than it is money in your hand.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with money in your hand. We receive it every time.
Yes.
Do not be one of those people that push it away. Because how can, some people are sitting around needing, and you try to give it to them and they won't even take it. Because they have too much pride to just receive when it's given to them. So never just push a blessing away when it comes your way. But know that if you don't get into the mindset and change your mind that you are the blessed of the Lord. And that you have been called to a feast where you don't have to slave to anything or anybody any day of the week. Then you can go to your job with joy and know that if you worked all week and at the end of the week they turned around and said, I don't even got the money to pay you, that you can rejoice and stand there and know that that's okay because Jesus said that my Father knows what I have need of before I even ask him. And so don't worry, because if you can't give it to me, if he has to rain manna down, if he has to tell me to go fishing and put it in a fish's mouth, however he's got to do it, he's going to do it. You can be like David and said, I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging for bread. Right. And I'm telling you, the Lord has a way of surprising you with how he meets your need. Amen. Because we tend to think that we got to go to work, get a paycheck, or at least somebody has to hand us some money in order for this to happen. And sometimes the Lord's going, look, you're doing all that, and you're taking the slow route, the hard route. Rick Manus tells a story about how he got over into, when he writes his book about the now. Okay? And he tells how he totaled his car, or his wife totaled it, one or the other, and they had zero money and zero credit to go get another vehicle. And they had no other vehicle. So they were walking anytime or begging for a friend to give them a ride so they could go to the grocery store or do whatever. But he said he was excited because the Lord's going to do something. I just know the Lord's going to do something. And that's a place to start. So we're not down in that. But the Lord had something to teach him about a better way. Just like Paul talks about there's a better way, and Hebrews shows us there's a new way. Well, this is a whole new way. So he said, and he was walking to the post office to check his mailbox every day because he just knew that some check was going to come in the mail. You know, he had his way figured out up here, how it was going to happen. And after 2 weeks, he said, you know, excitement started waning a little because nothing had happened. And the Lord spoke to him and told him, you know, you need to be ready for a new car. And he said, I am ready. And the Lord said, no, you're needy, but you're not ready yet. Yeah. And so he got with himself about getting ready, meaning that the Lord can do it anyway, anytime, and to stop putting it off into the future, but believing for it right now. That I need a car right now. I don't need to save up for the next 2 years for a car. I don't need to do all those things. I have a need right now for this, and I need a manifestation right now. So he got a call to go to a meeting, and now this is where you walk into sonship. God supposed to go do this meeting, and he feels in his spirit to only take a one-way plane ticket. Nobody said, hey, Rick, I'm going to buy you a car. Okay? Nobody has said that yet. And yet, he follows the leading of the Holy Spirit and buys that one-way plane ticket to there. And he got there, and of course, you know, God did what he always does. And if I remember the story correctly, it was from someone that couldn't even make it to the meeting, had to work or something of that nature, but his wife was going. And he said, hey, can we meet with you? So he went and met with them and basically gave him all the money he needed, just handed it, you know, go get your car. And he went and got his car, drove it home, you know, all the blessings. But see, he had to transition from thinking he had to show God how to do it and have it on his way. And God wanted to show him, look, I can jump you from believing in the money for a car straight to just a car. I can get you straight to there, and we can just move on. Because how many of you know when you read Matthew chapter 6, part of what Jesus is saying there is y'all are spending way too much time worrying about what you're going to eat, what you're going to drink, what you're going to wear, where you're going to live, just like the Gentiles do. All your worry, all your prayers about that, and I'm telling you that you don't need to take any thought about those things. Because I've got this covered. If I clothe the lily of the field, I'm going to clothe you. If I feed the sparrows, I'm going to feed you. And all your worrying and all your working and all your slaving, you can't even number the hairs on your head. You can't make yourself 1 inch taller or shorter. You can't do any of those things. And you think that somehow you're going to manifest this. And I'm telling you, I got it covered. All I want you to do is be about my kingdom. Just like Jesus was. And that means that you have to be free from all that slavery to those other things. There's only one form of slave that you get to be, and that's a bond slave. Bond slaves chose to stay with their master because their master was so good to them. And Paul said, when Paul says, I'm a slave to Christ, that word translates back to I'm a bond slave to him. He's so good, why would I leave his house? It's so blessed here, why would I go anywhere else? He treats me like a son. He doesn't treat me like a slave. He treats me like a son. He lets me know everything that's going on. So why would I run away from this when it's the best place to be? And it's got to be the same way with us. We got to figure out that his house is the best house to be in. And that's the only thing that we need to be serving. Is his way. And it's a joy to serve that way. Yeah. That's what Jesus said. He said, look, My burden's light. My yoke is easy. All that junk y'all carrying around that you hold on to so tightly. And yet if you throw it all down, my burden and my yoke is so easy to carry. See, it's a lot easier. We don't think so because we've been trained by the world and the world tells us it's not true. I'm telling you, it's a lot easier to believe God for your needs to be met than it is to work for it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, He may put you on a job to be a light because we are a city set on a hill and we are not to hide our light under there. So He may put you on a job, and if He tells you to go work it with joy. If He puts you somewhere, do it. Do it with joy, do it with laughter, knowing that He works everything together for your good and that, He's going to bless you right where you are. But having that slave mentality of I just got to work to get this, that keeps us, really, if you want to know what it does, it keeps us from spreading the gospel of this kingdom to all the world.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, like I said, you become so enthralled in your day-to-day and thinking, I got to keep this going, I got to keep this going, I got to keep this going. If I don't keep this going, it's all going to fall apart. I got to keep it going. And you become so enthralled in that when the trumpet blows, you don't have time to stop and come to the assembly.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus compared it to a wedding feast. And He had invited these people to come to His feast. He said, but when they went out to get the people, one said, well, I married a wife. Like the wife couldn't come to the wedding feast with her. But, I married a wife. I can't come. I bought a new piece of land. I really need to go check it out. I just bought this new donkey or mule and I need to try it out.
Mm-hmm.
They had excuses. And that's what happens is that when you are laboring, you always got some excuse not to enter into the rest.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens with Sabbath. If you don't make preparation to enter in, like Dad just said, you'll just make excuses of why you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when others enter in, a lot of times people get jealous over what they see because why is God blessing them so much? Why do they always seem to have it all together? Matt talks about that. With us as a family, we were always taught to keep it in-house. For right or wrong reasons, for pride or for whatever reason. But it is not to be prideful, but what we've learned about the principle of not telling everybody your problems is that what you magnify becomes bigger and bigger. So if you talk about it all the time, it will become bigger and bigger. We've all seen that very recently. What you discuss constantly becomes bigger and bigger and greater and greater. That's why David said, oh, magnify the Lord with me. Mm-hmm. If you want to magnify something, magnify me, magnify my word, but don't magnify the problem. It doesn't mean we don't ever face a problem. But Jesus faced more than one storm. It's not if you face the storm, it's how you face the storm. Because Jesus said, in this world you have tribulation.
Yeah.
That's just the world around you. I'm telling you, if nothing else, they won't like the color of your hair or the color of your shoes or the shirt you picked out for the day. That's just how the world is. They're unhappy on the inside, and it comes out on the outside, whereas everyone else. But you have a choice not to be a slave to them. And that when you hear the trumpet, you've made preparation. You've already decided. A lot of that preparation happens right in your heart.
Yeah.
Now, the Lord may tell you to do stuff. I have, even in my own life, there have been times when the Lord said, you're too busy. Now, that didn't mean that the work went away. I remember even in this particular year, and towards the beginning, I always think of years in terms of school years because I homeschool. So a year to me is August to August, But in the beginning of that, I got to where my mind was just too busy. Because, had to get all the homeschool work done. House still needs to be clean. Dinner's cooked. All those things. And it may not sound like a lot till you're the one doing it. Just the way it is. Until you get to do it all, it don't feel like it's a whole lot, You may think that we just sit around. I'm sure there are women that stay home that just sit around. But I'm not one of them. Yeah, he'll tell you. I'm not one of them, and I don't take homeschooling my kids, as just go run in the yard. I want to actually teach them and have them learn and grow. So, but I was taking it on myself. Now, when the Lord said you're too busy, guess what? The kids didn't go anywhere. The homeschool didn't go anywhere. The house didn't go anywhere. Food still had to be cooked, all those things. But what he meant by that was, you're trying to do this. You're trying to look at your schedule and somehow be a slave to time and fit it all in, and it don't all fit, and the bricks and the pieces of the puzzle aren't all making it work, and you're trying to figure out a way to make it work, and no matter how much you try to make it work, you can't seem to make it work, because I wouldn't let you make it work, because if you did, you think you could make it work. And the truth is, you're not supposed to make it work. I'm supposed to do it. If I called you to do it, I'll anoint you to do it. I've told more than one person this. I don't homeschool my kids because I just felt like homeschooling my kids. The Lord told me to do it. So I did it. Now, he might not tell you to do it. And if you don't. Be obedient. Do what you're told to do. But if you're told to do something, he will equip you to do it. But the minute you take it on, and you say, and we do that, we're guilty of that in our work, our job. He sends us to some place, and we're all excited it's a blessing. Yes, I got this job. And then we take it on, and we try to do it in our own strength, and it becomes a burden and a curse to us. And Lord, get me out of this job. And I'll take any other job in the world but this job. If you could just move me. But the truth is, if you get to the next job and you take it on the same way, and it now becomes your burden to take care of, you'll feel the same way about it. That's why the Lord started telling them, he said, I don't want your sacrifices and your offerings because you think they're a burden. You're not doing it because you love me. It's just another check off on your list. And we can't be like that. We got to leave all that servile work behind and get over into the flow of Sabbath rest. The flow of Sabbath rest is, if you need it, I'll supply it. Don't worry about where from. Don't worry about how. Don't even worry about the when, because I just told you, you were not created for time. Time was created for you. And the Lord can extend anything he needs to extend. He can bypass anything he needs to bypass. He is the one who makes the way. He can lead you beside still waters, but he can blow a whole ocean back if he needs to and lead you right across in the middle of an ocean. And sometimes where he leads you, when he led Joshua and the people to the river Jordan, it was not a good time to cross because Jordan had overflowed all of its banks because it had been raining. It had been a season of rain. It didn't look like a good time. And here we are. We're going to cross now, Lord. You couldn't have brought us here earlier. But he brings you there, and he doesn't ask you to do anything but what he tells you to do. And that's what Joshua told the people. He said, get ready. Wash, make yourself ready. We're about to cross over this Jordan. Get behind the ark. That means get in the Spirit, because the ark just represented the presence and the Spirit of God. And follow the ark wherever it goes. And when the priest stepped out in the water, what happened? The waters parted. And the people could cross over. But it wasn't, the people didn't have to make it happen. They didn't have to go build a bridge. See, that's what we all would have done. The Lord told us to cross, start cutting down timber. We're going to have to do this someday. He told us to do it. We're going to have to do something. Can't just sit around and do nothing. Yes, you can. You can sit there and wait for the word of the Lord. And make sure that the only thing you're listening to is that. And that you're not being moved by the winds and the waves of life. And you're not becoming a slave to all that. And then finally it says that in that day you're going to offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. Because the Feast of Trumpets is all about being on fire for God. Getting excited about what's about to happen. Because they blew the trumpets to call the assembly together to worship God. And they also, and I don't have time to get into everything that I wrote down, but they blew the trumpets to announce Jubilee. And if you don't know it, Jesus is Jubilee. So as soon as Jesus said it is finished, that opened up Jubilee year-round, every day of the week, for everybody. There's nothing wrong with celebrating it on the Jewish calendar, but it is not stuck to a Jewish calendar. And that when it's over, we all got to go back to our old ways. But it is a time, and in that time, one of the wonderful things that happened was that if you were a slave to anything, you got set free. And if you had lost anything, if you ever had to give up anything, it was given back to you. And whatever was yours was brought back to you. And that's what Jesus did. He came and said, if you're a slave to anything, congratulations, you've been set free. Mm-hmm. I came to preach liberty to those who were in captivity. He set everyone free. The Feast of Trumpets is just about letting the whole world know. And you're going to have to declare it. And you're going to have to blow that trumpet in your own house, over your own self, over others. And the day is now upon us when really we got to blow it almost everywhere we go. That's why I said it doesn't matter if you're up here anymore and you say, well, of course the ministers were supposed to blow the trumpet. That's their job. It's become now where everybody's got to blow the trumpet. And everybody's got to keep blowing. Because there are other people out there that are wanting to be the loud voice in this nation, in this world. And the Lord's saying, no, it's time for my people to be the ones blowing the trumpet. Because another thing that happened was trumpet, trumpet, it said that if it was a long blast, it meant war. Well, I thought you said our warfare is accomplished. Well, just go back and look at the places, though, where they blew that trumpet for war. One place was in Joshua. They blew the trumpet at Jericho, and they didn't have to do anything to make those walls fall down. They just fell. Because their warfare was already accomplished. He said, shout, because I've already given you this city. When Gideon blew his trumpet, they didn't fight. He blew the trumpet, and everybody broke their vessels and shined their lights and blew their trumpets and yelled, the sword of the Lord, the sword of Gideon, and it scared their enemies so much they got in confusion and started running off. Mm-hmm. So when you get up and start blowing that trumpet, some things are going to get confused. You may even see some things and some people run away. Because they don't know what to do with your trumpet. But that's okay. Because if an enemy needs to run, let him run. Let him go. Don't feel like you got to hold them there. You keep blowing that trumpet, and the Lord will bring them in their own time into the kingdom. You can't force them. But what you can do is in your house, in your place, in this temple, you can blow the trumpet and say, in my house, this is how it is. And it may cause a lot of noise. But it's about time that the people of God started making some noise. Because we've sat back quiet. And it was okay because everybody has a winter time. Winter isn't bad. Winter's a time for you to sit down and listen. Listen to what the Lord has to say. Listen to what He has to say to you. But when winter's over, you can't keep hiding out. When it's time to get up and blow the trumpet, you can't keep hiding away. And you can't keep making excuses. And you can't keep going about your same old, everyday thing. You have to decide that, no, in my life, I'm blowing the trumpet. And if it ain't kingdom, it can't stay. If it doesn't fit in with God's kingdom, then it just can't stay here. Because we're Zion people. We're not something else. We're not just Christians hoping to make it. We're not just here waiting out our time until either there's a rapture or we die or whatever happens. In Zion, you blow the trumpet and rejoice all day long. I can't wait for some people to get to heaven because it's going to be so much louder, so much wilder, just rejoicing all the time. And here they are thinking it was just going to be this little quiet place. And they're going to find out that the trumpets are blowing. And they keep blowing. And really, if you want to know the truth of it, they've been blowing since Jesus said it is finished. It's just that we are now opening up our ears and hearing it. So, thank you for listening tonight. And God bless you. We will be back here on Sunday. Brother Matt will be back. I'm assuming it's still 11 o'clock. Haven't heard any different. I don't think he'll change it right this second. So I think we're all safe. And so right here at 11 o'clock, Matt will be back. You won't want to miss Matt's first day back because that's always wild. He gets rested up, prayed up, ready to go. He's ripping and roaring, if nothing else, just to watch the show. it's fun to come. But if you'll get in on it, and you'll make that preparation, blow that trumpet this week, you might just be wilder than him. I'm going to tell you, I've been around him a long time. You want to know how to bless him? Get wilder than he is. He likes wild and loud and all of those things. That makes him happy. So if you really want to bless him, get in that. Because he likes it. So come on back and be with us on Sunday. And like I said, be prepared. Spend this week, spend time being prepared for the service. Don't just come in here. Look, I know sometimes we come in here with a real need and a real burden, and we need to be picked up, and that's okay. That's what this place is here for. But sometimes we're just lazy all week and then come in here and want someone to pick us up. Okay? But don't be like that this week. Get what you need done so that on Sunday you can concentrate on the Lord. And you can, put all of your everything into the meeting.